Help me reach 1,000 subscribes. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every comment. Thanks. I never thought a routine Monday could unravel everything I thought I knew about Sarah. She had been my colleague for 3 years. Friendly, competent, and always just out of reach in the sense that I never let myself overthink her. Until that morning. I walked into the office around 8:15, coffee in hand, my laptop bag slung over my shoulder, and the air already smelled of printer ink and burnt toast from the tiny cafeteria downstairs. Nothing seemed unusual, except for the way she was leaning against James's desk, laughing. Not politely. Not the casual chuckle we all shared over spreadsheets or silly office jokes, laughing like she just won the lottery. And all of it was directed at him. James, my least favorite person in the office. He had a charisma I despised, the kind that made people hang on to every word he said without realizing they were being played. I stopped in the doorway for a second, letting my eyes adjust, heart thumping harder than it should. Sarah's hand brushed his shoulder lightly as she laughed again, and that smile, oh, that infuriating smile, lit up the entire office. I took a slow, measured step forward, pretending to be absorbed in my emails on my phone. But inside, something in me twisted. The rational part of my mind, the part that reminded me this was work, that she was married to a complicated life I didn't understand, wanted to step back. The emotional part, the one that had been quietly observing her for months, wanted to storm across that room and shake some sense into her. Instead, I chose a cold stare. I didn't just look at her. I locked eyes with a precision that cut through the laughter. One steady, unwavering gaze that didn't speak, but said everything. I see you, and I am not moved. Her laughter faltered for the first time. James tilted his head, confused, probably thinking I was joking. But Sarah froze entirely, her smile faltering as if someone had flicked a switch in her chest. I didn't move. I just let the silence stretch, filling the space between us with tension so palpable that people walking past our desk slowed, glanced over, and whispered to themselves. I sat at my desk across the room, opening my laptop as if nothing happened. But my mind was racing. Every memory of our casual coffees, the small chats about projects, the jokes about deadlines, all of it replayed in an instant. I couldn't tell if it was jealousy, anger, or betrayal. Maybe all three. By 10 a.m., the office had settled into its usual hum. Phones ringing, keyboards clattering, the distant murmur of HR gossip. Yet every time I glanced toward her corner, she was trying, subtly, to avoid my eyes. She was still smiling, but it was forced now, tight at the corners, controlled. The tension was delicious, not because I enjoyed seeing her embarrassed, but because it was a reminder that appearances could crumble under the weight of observation. Lunch came and went, and the dynamic hadn't shifted. She was polite now, measured, as if every word she spoke had to pass an invisible filter. I noticed the way she moved her hands differently, how she adjusted her posture, as if to correct herself subconsciously. James hadn't seemed to notice the shift yet, still grinning, still oblivious. The emails I had been pretending to read now felt like sandpaper against my nerves. I couldn't focus on the spreadsheets, couldn't tally numbers or analyze reports. All I could do was watch, observe, the small victories, the subtle realizations, the flickers of discomfort she couldn't hide. It was quiet, almost painfully so. And in that quiet, I found an odd sense of satisfaction. Not revenge, not malicious, just clarity. By mid-afternoon, the tension had reached its peak. Sarah passed by my desk, pretending to deliver a file, but I caught her wrist lightly brushing mine. A spark, a memory, a jolt I wasn't expecting. I didn't flinch, didn't retreat. My stare met hers for a brief second, calm, unyielding, and she froze again. I saw her eyes flick to James, then to me, then back to James. Confusion, a hint of fear, and, most important, a recognition. She realized that her casual dominance, the flirtation she had wielded like a weapon, no longer held any power. And that's when she smiled at me, not her full, easy, light-up-the-room smile. Not the one that made me reconsider logic and sanity all at once. This was sharp, precise, controlled. A smile that said, I know you see me. I know I can't hide. And yet, what will you do? The rest of the afternoon dragged. I answered emails, made calls, participated in meetings. All of it routine. But every glance across the room reminded me of that silent duel, the power of observation, the quiet dominance of stare that could dismantle a facade in seconds. When the day ended and we were packing our bags, I noticed her lingering near the door. I didn't approach. I didn't smile. I simply walked past her, a calm rhythm in my steps, leaving a trace of unresolved tension that followed her like a shadow. She looked at me, paused, and then looked away. Walking to my car, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and anticipation. This wasn't over, not by a long shot, but the first move had been made. The silent shift of power, the quiet assertion of presence had happened. And tomorrow, the game would continue. The next morning, I arrived early, intentionally, my coffee still warm from the thermos I brought in. The office was quiet. Only the hum of the lights and the distant clatter of a vacuum in the hallway. I glanced toward her desk before settling in mine. Sarah wasn't there yet, but I knew she'd noticed my presence the moment she walked in. The game was subtle, psychological, but that made it infinitely more satisfying. By 8:05, she appeared, her heels clicking against the tile floor. She carried her usual tote bag, hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless. But there was tension in her shoulders, a rigidity I hadn't seen before. As she passed my desk, she didn't look at me. She didn't have to. I could feel her calculation, the way her mind was racing to figure out what I'd done overnight, what I'd been thinking. James, of course, noticed her distraction immediately. He approached with that arrogant smile, leaning casually against her desk, probably expecting to reclaim the laughter and the charm that had worked yesterday. But she didn't respond the way she usually did. Her eyes darted nervously, a flicker of guilt, maybe even fear, betraying her polished exterior. I stayed seated, pretending to organize papers, every movement deliberate, controlled. I let the tension build, knowing she would feel it, even if she didn't consciously acknowledge it. And then it happened, the subtle misstep that told me everything. James made a joke, leaned closer to her desk, and she laughed, but it was forced, sharp at the edges, not the genuine warmth she had displayed the day before. I saw her glance toward me, a flicker of awareness passing through her expression, and I knew she realized the power dynamic had shifted. The morning passed like that, a slow chess game of glances, subtle gestures, and unspoken rules. Every time James tried to insert himself, she recoiled slightly, as if learning boundaries she hadn't been aware existed. By noon, I noticed her fiddling with her phone more than usual, scrolling with a nervous rhythm. I caught her eye once, calm, steady, unflinching, and for a fraction of a second, I saw a panic flash across her face. Lunch was the turning point. The cafeteria was crowded, everyone chatting about reports, weekend plans, and trivial gossip. Sarah and James sat together at a table near the window, but she didn't initiate conversation. She wasn't leaning in, wasn't laughing freely. I could see the effort it took her to maintain composure, the subtle tightness in her jaw, the occasional flick of her eyes toward the door where I had just walked past. I walked past her table without a word, letting my presence linger in the corner of her vision. She caught it, and her fork hovered midair. A small, involuntary shiver ran through her posture. James leaned in to say something, but she barely nodded, eyes locked somewhere distant enough to remind him she was no longer entirely his to command. By mid-afternoon, the office felt different. A subtle quiet had settled, the kind that speaks of awareness, tension, and unspoken lessons. Sarah approached my desk under the pretense of asking a question about a project. I looked up slowly, meeting her eyes, calm and unwavering. She hesitated. Her usual confidence, her casual charm, it faltered in a way that made my chest tighten, not with joy, but with recognition. She understood. She finally understood that she had crossed a line, and that crossing had consequences. Hey, about the Harper report, she started, voice measured, careful. I nodded slowly, keeping my tone neutral. Yes. Her hands trembled slightly as she handed me the file. For the first time, I saw a vulnerability in her expression, subtle but undeniable. That tight smile she had worn all morning softened, almost imperceptibly, but the message was clear. She realized the illusion she had created was over. The laughter, the flirtation, the casual dominance. It had all been stripped away by something as simple and cold as presence. Later, when the workday ended, I packed my bag methodically, aware she was lingering in the hallway, pretending to sort papers, pretending to talk to colleagues. But I could feel her attention on me. I didn't acknowledge it. I didn't need to. The lesson had been delivered silently, unambiguously. As I walked toward the elevator, she fell into step beside me, careful to maintain distance, careful not to show the relief or fear that was unmistakably there. She opened her mouth, hesitated, then simply said, "Good work today." A mundane statement on the surface, but beneath it, I felt a recognition of authority, respect, and boundaries. I didn't reply. I just nodded, letting the silence carry the weight of what had passed. She understood that our interactions would never be the same, that the easy flirtation, the games, the casual displays of power, all of it had ended. She had tried to assert control, and I had responded with calm presence, patience, and awareness. Outside, the evening sky was streaked with gold and gray. I walked to my car slowly, savoring the quiet, the shift in energy, the subtle thrill of having claimed control without a word, without confrontation, without spectacle. Sometimes, the most powerful moves are the ones nobody notices until it's far too late. Sarah would have tomorrow, and the day after, to remember what had happened. And though she wouldn't admit it, she had learned something she couldn't unlearn. Some games can't be won with charm, laughter, or smiles. Sometimes, all it takes is a quiet, unwavering stare to redraw the rules entirely. And me? I felt neither revenge nor malice. Just clarity, control, and the quiet satisfaction of a lesson delivered perfectly.